Hi everyone, and welcome to my next video tutorial, which will be focused on deploying our Django web applications to Circumeo. Now, Circumeo is a specialized deployment platform that is geared towards Django applications. So it is a very simple deployment platform to easily go on ahead and deploy your Django applications without much fuss or any hassle. And of course, it is very beginner friendly as well. And it's also going to become useful to you if you are also an intermediate developer, since it has a lot of external features, especially focused on Celery as well. But more of that soon enough, but let's go on ahead and take a look more into Circumeo. So one of the great things about Circumeo is that it offers very fast deployment. And a very important feature that I also want to mention is that it also provisions a Postgres database, runs your migrations, and it also will be able to set up TLS certificates and all of that very quickly. Now, just a little bit more in terms of Circumeo. So it offers rapid deployment, Django first tooling. So of course, the whole building and focus of Circumeo is on Django applications. So that is of course going to be a priority. Now, of course, there are some additional things to keep in mind, such as the integration of Django performance insights. And there's also the opportunity to focus on Celery. So there is advanced Celery integration available as well. Now, just a little bit over the pricing. Now, of course, there is a free tier available, and there's also a pro tier, which costs $4 a month. So as we can see here on the left-hand side of each of these respective tiers, you can see all of the benefits that are eligible to you depending on the tier that you select. Now, of course, for this video tutorial, we're going to focus on the free tier, and I am going to delve a little bit in terms of the pro tier, specifically with a custom domain name. Of course, there are some features here which you can also look into Circumeo. So to reduce the time to release with a streamlined deployment pipeline, we can use easy rollbacks to deliver features to end users with peace of mind. And you can connect to the Django shell or to the Postgres database with ease to diagnose and debug issues. And of course, we can track down performance bottlenecks quickly and easily with Django Insights. All right, so that's just a little bit of introduction into Circumeo. Now, what we're going to do now is go on ahead and register for a Circumeo account. So let's go ahead and do just that. So what we would need to do is just scroll to the top, and you can go ahead and sign up. Now, I will ensure that I attach the link to Circumeo in the description below of this particular video, and then you can go ahead and click on that link, and that will take you straight to the Circumeo website. So that is how you can go ahead and do so. So just keep that in mind. So what we can do now is say sign up. Right, so let's get started with the sign up process for our account. So what we want to do is we want to sign up, and we can either do so by entering a username and a password, or what you can do is you can go on ahead and sign up with two options down below, which is via Google or via GitHub. So the choice is yours as to how you want to go on ahead and sign up for your account. It's really up to you as to how you want to proceed and how you want to go on from there. So I'm just going to do it the regular way. So I'm going to set up a username and a password. So let me go ahead and do just that. Right. So I've gone ahead and entered in a username and also set up a password. So now what I want to do is I want to scroll down and sign up. So we want to sign up for our Circumeo account. So it'll just take a moment. And here we are. Now, there are several ways in which we can go ahead and create our project on the Circumeo platform. So we can either start from scratch, import from GitHub, or upload our existing project from our own computer. So you can see it's very flexible in going on ahead and reading more into the details. Now, you can also go on ahead and learn more by viewing the docs. I will be sure to attach all of the relevant literature in the docs also in the description of this video, so not to worry. But you can also visit the docs as well of Circumeo to go on ahead and read further into all the intricacies that are available to you as to how you can go on ahead and continue with the process at hand. I will be referring to the documentation later in this video in terms of the automatic updates that are going to be performed, but that's something to cover later in the video. Right, so just keep that in mind. All right, now we're going to, for the time being, just leave this page as is, and we're going to return to it later in this video, and we are going to essentially import from GitHub. But before we do that, we need to make sure that our project is ready for deployment. We need to make sure that we push our project to GitHub as well. And then in this video tutorial, we're going to learn how we can import from our GitHub repository and connect to Circumeo in that fashion. So more on that soon enough, but what we're going to do now is go on ahead and prepare our project for deployment. So just to give you some clarity, I do have a simple project here, as you can see, that I have set and ready to go that I want to deploy to Circumeo. Right, so let's go on ahead and prepare our project for deployment. So what you want to do is you want to navigate to your project in Visual Studio Code. And the first thing that I want to go on over is our static files. So as you can see here in my project, I have a static folder here. I have my CSS folder for my CSS files and a JS folder for my JavaScript files. And of course, this is going to be mainly utilized for development purposes. And then of course, I also have my statics files folder, which I have collected, situated within the static root that I have configured in my settings.py file. So let me just shed some light on that. So if you want to ensure that your static files are served correctly, you must just make sure that you have the base settings in place and ready for deployment. So if you navigate to your project settings.py file, you want to make sure that you have your static URL configured as is. So you can see how it correlates to my particular project. I also have set up my static files dirs as well, which is essentially going to be telling Django from where to serve the static files from. So we're telling Django, hey, look at my base directory, which is right in this directory here, and I want you to serve my static files from my static folder that I've defined. I've also gone ahead and set up static root for deployment purposes, and that of course is pertaining to another folder called static files, which also houses all of the behind the scenes static files such as the CSS and JavaScript files from the Django admin, which we don't work with until we call static, we call Python manage.py collect static, and then of course we can work with that. So make sure you've got all of these configuration settings set up. Now the good thing about Circumeo is that it will automatically manage your static files for you, so you don't need to set up anything like white noise or anything of the like. Now, for those of you that are wondering how to collect their static files, I'll show you the command to do so that you can have this static root in place here with that static folder set up. So to do so, you want to go to your command prompt. Let me clear this up. And you want to say Python manage.py collect static and press enter. And then you're going to see a message that says that it's going to go on ahead and collect static files at the particular destination. And you can just say yes. And here we go. We can see that it has already gone ahead and copied the static files for me. But in your case, if you haven't done so, it's going to take a moment, and then it's going to go ahead and copy all of your static files to the directory that you choose. And if it doesn't actually exist yet, Django is going to create one for you. All right. Great, so that is on that. Now let's continue with all of the other details we need to keep in mind. So I'm going to maximize the settings.py file. And you want to make sure that you have set debug to false. So this is a security setting that we need to keep in mind. So for debug, you want to set this to false so we don't have any leaks or issues of the sort. Now under allowed hosts, what's going to happen is once we've deployed our project for the first time on Circumeo, it is automatically going to generate a default domain name for you. So for the time being, before we can utilize that domain name, and this goes for every deployment platform, I'd recommend that you just first of all enter in the star for allowed all hosts. Now don't worry, once we've deployed it, of course, what's going to happen is we are going to just make sure and check that the allowed host is set only to the domain that we have assigned for us, just to make sure that we have safety in place. Now, another thing that I want to mention is automatically what's going to happen is, for example, the CSRF trusted origin setting is automatically going to be matched with the domain name that is generated by default for us by Circumeo, as well as a lot of other settings which will automatically be set in out of the box for us. And this is something I want to touch on later on once we've actually deployed our application, and I'm going to go through it with you. So there are a lot of things that will automatically be set up for you, which is going to help you to have a smooth transition on the deployment platform, and that's also going to go for domain names as well. All right, so make sure you've got this in place. Now, the next thing that we want to do is we can navigate to our base directory here. We can close settings.py. Is that we want to make sure that we house all of our packages and libraries in our requirements.txt file. So what you're going to want to do is navigate to your terminal where you are currently running your project. So I'm in my virtual environment and I want to run the command pip freeze > requirements.txt, and that's going to create a requirements.txt file for me, and in that particular file it's going to house all of the packages and libraries that I've used for my current project. So if it indents to a new line, that means it has been a success, and to confirm this you can check in your base directory that you now should have a requirements.txt file with all of the packages / libraries that you've used for the project that you are intending on deploying to Circumeo. So that is what we need to get set up and prepared for the moment. All right, great. Now, the next thing that we're going to want to do is we're going to want to set up our environment variables. So that's what we need to do next. All right, so let's continue and let's head on back to our settings.py file of our existing project. And right at the top of your file, you want to go on ahead and import the OS module. So you can say import OS. And in terms of this project I'm working with, I only really have one piece of sensitive data, you could say, and that's a secret key, which is going to be the same for all of us Django developers. So let's go on ahead and secure this. So what I always like to do is just copy this secret key along with the value assigned to it. So I'm going to copy this entire line, and I'm going to just save this in a normal notepad.txt file. And I'm just going to keep it safe here for now. And of course, we're going to set up environment variables on Circumeo. So not to worry, we are going to get to setting that up in the deployment provider. So I want to go ahead and copy that away. And then I want to just remove this value. And I'm going to set the secret key value to the following method, which is going to incorporate this OS module. Now I'm going to say os.environ.get, and then here within this method, so it's the os.environ.get method, which is going to get a secret key. Now the first parameter is going to be the secret key that you wish to get in your environment. So you can type in here secret_key, all right, and that's going to be the name that we're going to set here when we add it into Circumeo, but I will elaborate on this further later on. And then the second parameter is going to take in, you could say, an empty value or empty string, and that's just something that you need to add in here that's mandatory. So the only reason for this is to ensure that if for some reason that environment variable secret key is not available, it just needs to have a empty string, you could say, or empty value for this method to actually work. So it's just kind of a formality that you need to add this second parameter in here, which contains nothing. So that is how we can set up our environment variables. So just make sure that you have your environment variables and the associated values outside of your application. Just store it somewhere locally for the time being. Once we've deployed our application, we're going to inject our environment variable securely so we don't have any issues of safety or leaks or anything like that. So that's how we can set up our environment variables for the time being. All right, so make sure you've gone ahead and set the following, and you're going to want to set the same structure and pattern that I've just showed you for all of the secret information that you have within your project. All right, perfect. Now, the next thing that we want to do is we want to focus on pushing our application to GitHub. Now, there are a few steps, so let's go ahead and get started with that. So what we can do now is we can actually close this settings.py file, make sure that you save everything accordingly, and then what we're going to do is continue the steps with GitHub. All right, so let's continue with the rest of the process. So now what we want to do is we want to head on over to our GitHub dashboard. Now, if you don't have a GitHub account, what you're going to want to do is create a GitHub account. I will be sure to attach a link in the description below to take you to github.com. So all you need to do is sign up for an account. It's very easy. So set up a email that you want to associate for your GitHub account, attach a username that you wish, set a password, and there you go. So make sure you've gone ahead and set up your GitHub account. And then of course, make sure you're on your GitHub dashboard. And for those of you that already have a GitHub account, let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing we want to do is create a repository, and I would recommend that you keep it on private. So the more private and secure everything is, the better. So let's choose a repository name. So you can decide on a name of your own choice. And I'm just going to say project X. And then I want to say create a new repository. And there we go. My project X repository was created. Right, so if we scroll down now, we can see some more information in terms of how we can go on ahead and create a new repository on the command line, or how we can push an existing repository from the command line. So what we're essentially going to do is we're going to set up Git on our machine so we can automatically push our application source code to GitHub. Now you can either do this manually or you can do it automatically with Git. Now the manual way is good if you are working with a very small project, and it's good for learning purposes. However, it's better to automatically push your source code with Git, because that's going to cover everything, no matter the size of your project or whatnot, right? And that's exactly what we are going to be doing. So you then want to head on over to Git. So of course the URL is at git-scm.com. I will be sure to attach that link also in the description. So just to give you some context, guys, so all of the literature and all of the documentation and all the websites that we are working with that's important in this video tutorial will be in the description below for you. All right. Okay, so what we want to do next is we want to install Git on our machine. Now, of course, if you are on macOS, it should prompt the download for macOS option to you. If you're on Windows, it should detect that you're using a Windows. So what I'm going to do is download for Windows. Okay, that's going to take me to this page right here. And I'm going to go ahead and choose a 64-bit Git for Windows setup. So we want to download Git for Windows. Let's go ahead and do just that. Okay, so it's going to take a moment to download, and then we can go ahead and click on the installer in our downloads folder, and it may dim our screen. Yep, so your screen's going to dim. You just want to say yes to the message, the security message, and that's going to prompt up the setup wizard for Git. So what we can do is we can just say next. You can choose a directory if you so desire. I'm just going to leave it as is, say next. And if it exists, you can just go ahead and say yes if it does. And then we can see here the various components, which is going to be set up here. We can just go ahead and say next. Next. And you just want to go through the process and just say next and leave it on the default for the majority of what you see here. Okay, I won't go into the details here because we're not focusing on Git. Okay, and this is an important one. So make sure for your credential helper that you select Git Credential Manager here. This is going to be quite important. Okay, we can say next, 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 and install. All right, so it's going to take a moment to install Git. So all we need to do is be a little bit patient as the process gets completed. And once it's been set up, I'll show you the next set of steps that we need to continue and follow along with. All right, so welcome back. So as we can see, Git was successfully installed on our machine. Now you can view the release notes as you so desire, but I'm not going to do this here. We're just going to launch git bash. So this is where we're going to add in all the commands for pushing our application to GitHub. So you can just say finish, just make sure that you selected launch git bash. Okay, here we are. So here is git bash here for us. So the terminal that we'll be using, I just want to minimize that a little bit like so. All right, there we go. So we have it in place. Now we'll get to this in a moment. So let's just minimize it for now, but make sure that you've gone ahead and set up Git and you have it all set up on your machine. Right, so let's head on back to GitHub now. Now the next thing that we need to do is we need to create a personal access token. Now the reason for doing so is because we are utilizing a private repository. Now, if you didn't have a private repository, you wouldn't have to do this, but since we want to make sure that we are using best practices as much as we can by securing as much as we can for our project, it's best to rather go the long distance. So what you want to do is you want to go ahead and click on your profile here for your GitHub account. And then what you want to do is you want to go on ahead and scroll down until you see settings. So you want to select settings. Right, then you can scroll down, and on the left-hand side there, you will see developer settings here. So on the left-hand side of your profile, and you can click on that. Then what you want to do is you want to navigate to personal access tokens, and you want to select that drop-down menu, and we're going to use a classic token. So we can click on that. All right, so the next thing that you want to do is you want to go ahead and generate a new token. So you can click here on generate new token, and you can go ahead and say classic, so for general use here. And then you want to give it a name of sorts. I'm just going to say project, let's say PX1, okay, and you can set an expiration date here when you want it to expire. You can set it to a custom date, or you can set no expiration. So I just want to set the scope here for what I'm allowed to do. So I'm going to say this personal access token is going to have full access to my repository. So you want to just click here on this checkbox to select everything repository wise. Right, so make sure you have selected that. And that is all that you're going to want to select here. All right, so just to give you clarity again, what I'll do is, just to make sure it's clear, I'll just zoom in a little bit. So you want to make sure that you set it to repo. So you want to click on that checkbox right here to have full control of your private repository. And that's the key that we are looking into. So just make sure you've gone ahead and down that. So you can scroll down now and say generate token. Right, so that token has been generated. So what you want to do is you want to copy that token here. So remember, make sure that you copy it now because you won't be able to see it again. So I'm going to copy the one I have right here. Head on over to my notepad. And here I have a notepad file for my GitHub personal access token, and you want to save that somewhere. So just remember, you won't be able to access it again. You'll only have the chance now. So just keep that in mind. All right, so what we can do now is we can go ahead and head on back to our repository. So I'm going to click on my profile and go straight to my list of repositories. Here's my repository project X. And here I am. All right, so this URL here is going to be important in a moment. So just make sure that you are within your repository that you created earlier and that you have generated your personal access token. All right, perfect. So we now have our token in place. So next thing that we want to do is we want to go ahead and actually push our source code now to this repository project X, and we're going to use the git bash terminal for this process. All right, so let's get started. So I'm going to just navigate to Visual Studio Code here as a background of sorts and open up git bash. Now, what you want to do is you want to navigate to your project directory. All right, so I'm going to tell you my project structure. So my project's on my desktop. So let me show you the whole deal that I have set up here. So I'll just minimize. So here is my project, so project CRM, and that is on my desktop. So the first thing I need to do is head on over to my desktop. So if I go to git bash, I want to say cd, which means change directory, and I want to go to my desktop. Great, so I'm now on my desktop, and I want to go into this folder called Project CRM. Now, Project CRM, okay, is just a regular folder which houses my Django project CRM, and I also have a virtual environment folder here, but we're not going to pay attention to that. So let's just follow that step. So now I want to go into Project CRM, which is a folder on my desktop. So now I'm going to say cd project -CRM. Now, your Django projects may be structured differently, and you may have files in files. So you're just going to have to try and make it as simple as possible as you can. So now I'm in this project CRM folder now. And the next thing I want to do is I want to change the directory so that I'm now in my Django project, and that here is called CRM, and that is within project CRM. So just keep in mind the directory structure. So now what I'm going to do is say cd CRM. There we go. So now I am where I need to be. So you can see now my directory as follows. And what we can do now is we can just clear this up, okay, so that we have more clarity. So make sure you're in the project that you want to give Git access to. So now we have access to everything in this CRM folder. So all of these folders and all of these files that we have in place, we now have access, and we're going to push all of this to our GitHub repository now. Right, so to first of all get everything started, we need to initialize our project. So to do so, we can say git init. Right, so we've initialized an empty Git repository within the designated directory that we have set. And then we want to add all of the files and folders that we have. So to do so, you can say git add space and then dot. So dot is going to add everything that we have in this particular CRM directory. So we can press enter. And that is going to go ahead and add everything that we have, all of our files and associated folders. All right, so we have that set. Now I want to clear this up because it is going to move everything to the bottom. Right, then we want to create our first commit. So I'm going to say git commit -m. So -m means make, and here I'm just going to add in a message. I'm just going to say in quotes, first commit, in quotes, and I'm going to press enter. Okay, so that's going to commit all of my files and folders, and then I want to create a branch. So let's clear this up. And I want to create a branch now. So I'm going to say git branch -m for make, and I'm going to put everything on a main branch. So this is very important, so make sure you're following what I'm doing here. So I'm going to put everything to a main branch, so I'm going to create that branch. And then I want to go on ahead and add my origin. So I'm going to say git remote add origin. So we're just going to essentially state where we want to push this source code to, so to which repository. So git remote add origin, and now you can navigate to GitHub, and you want to copy this URL that you have here up top here. Okay, and you can navigate to git bash here, so to the terminal. I'm going to right click and paste this. And the only thing that you want to do here is you want to add .git at the end, right? So you want to add in this URL for your repository and add in .git at the end. Okay. And now what we want to do is we want to push everything to our main branch that we created. So we're going to push everything now to our repository. So you can say git push -u, and that's going to be on the origin of the main branch. And you want to then go ahead and say --force to make sure that it gets pushed properly, because sometimes it doesn't get pushed. So we want to say force. And now is where the token is going to come into play. So it was very important in the Git setup that you enabled the credential manager, because now a pop-up is going to appear where you need to give permission to actually push this to a private repository. So after you press enter, it's going to take a moment, and you're going to see the credentials manager, is going to appear. So it's going to take a moment. So just give it a moment, and here we go. Here it is. So we want to sign into GitHub with a token. So you can go ahead and click on token, and now you can enter in your personal access token. So I'm going to open up my notepad where I saved it, copy that, and you just want to go on ahead and paste that in and say sign in. And that's going to push your source code to the repository now. And there we go. We can see it pushed and onto that branch that we designated, and we're good to go. So now if we minimize this git bash console and refresh our repository so we can just reload, we can now see that we have all of our files now pushed within this Project X repository, and we have everything here in place that we so desire. And the good thing now is we don't have that virtual environment folder to worry about, because we set up our structure correctly as it should be. Right, so there we go. So we have successfully gone on ahead and pushed our application to GitHub. Now we can go ahead and focus on Circumeo and all of the intricacies that are needed, and we can go on from there. Right, so perfect. Well done on getting to this point. Right, so now what we can do is navigate to Circumeo, and let's go ahead and import this project that we have from GitHub. So let's go ahead and continue with the next set of steps. Right, so let's get started. So what we can do now is we can say import from GitHub. Okay. And the first thing that we need to do is we need to visit the link below to install the Circumeo GitHub app. So what you can do is we can go ahead and install this in GitHub. So make sure that you are still signed in to your GitHub account to which you want to associate this with. So in your dashboard. So what I'm going to do is right click and open this in a new tab. And I just want to install the Circumeo importer. So you can go ahead and just say install. Okay, and you can decide whether you want this to be installed for all your repositories or only select repositories. I'd suggest just saying all for now. And we're just going to want to say install. There we go. So the Circumeo importer was installed on our account. So make sure that you have this set up. Right, so we can now go ahead and close this now. So we have done that. Now we need to give our project a name. Okay, so go ahead and add in a name for your project. So I'm going to say here test project 2. And then you want to add in your GitHub repository URL. So we can see here, it already adds in the format that is set for us. So it's going to, of course, be at github.com/our username and repository. And we have this right here. So we can just evaluate that particular status. So I can see my username and my repository. So I can copy this URL, hit on back, and I can go ahead and paste this in. So I'm going to do just that, and there we have it. And then, of course, the branch name is Noel. So we know that the branch name that we set up throughout the whole process was, of course, on our main branch, which we can see right here. So it doesn't hurt to just type it in. So in the branch name, we can just put in main. Right, there we go. And the next thing here, we need to choose if we want to update the settings module. So this is something that Circumeo will do for us. So if you hover over to the question mark, so it's going to see here is if we decide to check this option, it's going to automatically update our project settings for compatibility. So we can read this further in the documentation for Circumeo. So if you were to decide to import your project from GitHub and that you have it all set up and ready to go, what you can do if you scroll down here is you can go ahead and see some further information that pertains to what we are doing when we're checking the update settings module. So essentially, we're going to give Circumeo permission to edit our project settings module, and there are various settings such as allowed hosts and our CSRF trusted origins, which will be modified to automatically include the hosted subdomain for our project. And also the databases block is going to be updated to use the integrated Postgres database that Circumeo provides for us. So this is very helpful, and this is why we didn't need to set up our CSRF trusted origins. And the reason for that, of course, is as we can see here, the subdomain that we are going to get assigned for our project is automatically going to be added in for that. And also, the databases block is going to be automatically configured with environment variables, and we're also going to have a production-based database, which is Postgres, instead of the default SQLite database with Django, is automatically going to be set up for us. So as you can see here, we're going to connect automatically to an integrated Postgres database for us already. So as we can see, it's going to be as follows and in place once we have gone ahead and set everything up as we should. Right, so just some clarity here, and I would encourage you to read the docs for further information to just keep that in mind. So I just wanted to go through this update settings module and what it entails. So let's head on back. And what you want to do now is you just want to say submit once you've got everything in place. Okay, so it'll just take a moment. And now it's going to be pulling our code from GitHub. So we're just going to want to be patient. And as we can see here, that Circumeo is now going to provide a default Postgres database for our project. And we can see here the snippet that's provided just to show how that connection is going to be entailed. And of course, in the documentation, we can read some more information on that, but this is going to be added for us, and it's going to essentially replace the default SQLite database settings for us and take precedence over that. Right, and of course, as we can see here, we can just say next. And another thing which I'm going to delve into the further detail is the GitHub push deployment. So essentially what we can do is we can go on ahead and update this project by pushing updates to our main branch, and new packages will be installed when added to the requirements.txt file and any new migrations. So I will go into further detail on that in just a moment. So we can just say, okay. All right, so here we can see we have our logs and we can see everything being committed and into place. So if I scroll up here, we can see here that our deployment was started. the image build was set up and into place here. And of course, what also occurred during this entire setup is all of our packages were also being grabbed from our requirements.txt file. And as we can see here, all the migrations were automatically set up and into place as well. So Circumeo went ahead and ran the migrations to migrate all the default apps and all the new apps that we have of our project as well into place. And additional settings have been modified, such as our allowed hosts, our CSR of trusted origins, our static root, and our databases block as well. That was also into place, and we can see everything was collated and set up and into place. So now we have everything ready. So what we can do is we can go ahead and access our project at the following domain name, which was provided for us. So let's go ahead and check that out. So what we can do is right click on the link and open that in a new tab. And then what we can do is go ahead and access that. So we can see now, for the time being, we have a server error. So what we're going to want to do is we can go ahead and close this tab. And you want to go ahead and now add in your secret key environment variable. So this is the reason why we have this. So what we can do now is go to our access, we can go to our file or our environment variable. And let's go ahead and copy our environment variable name here. And we can go ahead and open up the following shell here, and we can go to variables. And then here by default, we can see the environment variables set with the database, but I'll dive into that in a moment. So you want to say add variable, which will be an environment variable, and you want to add in a key name. So what's your environment variable key? So if we look here in our settings.py file, we've associated that environment variable name as secret_key. So what you want to do is you want to add in the value here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and add in that value. So I'm going to go ahead and copy that within the strings that I have here. And I'm going to paste that value in. And what I want to do next is save those changes so that my secret key is pulled in. So I'm going to say save changes. So the environment variables have been updated. Now, when you are dealing with environment variables, okay, you're going to have to deploy this here fully. So automatically what Circumeo will do is it will automatically update and save all the changes that you make to your application automatically. But there are instances where you have to hit the deploy button to go on ahead and save everything. And a key area of this is when you're working with your environment variables. So you're going to want to say deploy, okay? And of course, we can see here, this is what I meant. So dev mode is enabled by default. So this means that our app will automatically restart as files are changed. And we don't need to do this unless we make changes to the requirements.txt file which has been changed or any unapplied database migrations, but also with environment variables as well. So do keep that in mind. And this is listed in the documentation as well. So what we can do is say, okay, we can close this. And what we're going to want to do is just wait a little bit. So I'd just recommend waiting a little bit. And then what we can do is go ahead and refresh our application at the following domain name that was assigned to us. So let's go ahead and do that just now. So what I'm going to do is just refresh and reload the page. And there we go. So there's our application hosted, running. We've configured our environment variables. We've got that into place, and we can see our static files remain unchanged. So Circumeo automatically goes on ahead and configures your static files for you. All right, so you don't need white noise or anything like that. So it works nicely out of the box. And we also have a Postgres database assigned to it. So let's just explore a little bit. So I can see now my application works perfectly fine, and a good testament to see our static files working correctly is if you go to your admin site of your application. So if I go and put in at the end there /admin with this associated domain name, I can see now my admin page is also running nicely. I haven't lost a style or anything of the sort. That is in place as it should be. All right, so that's how you can deploy your application to Circumeo. But there are more things I want to dive deeper into, so let's do just that. So let's head on back to where we were. Right, so let's continue. So let's see what was set up and what we have set into place. Now, with that update settings module, it automatically, let me actually zoom in. So it automatically went in ahead and associated the domain name that was created when we went ahead and set up this project. So it adds that into your allowed host setting. So what you could technically do is now remove that star for allowed hosts. So that's something we'll do in a moment. And as you can see, the reason why it said internal server error was because, of course, we didn't configure our environment variable, but I just wanted to show you the simplicity of the process so you can understand how we should set up our environment variables as well, and what you'll see the difference if you have set it right or wrong. Okay, so let's continue. Right, so a lot of this is, of course, pertaining to my own application, but if we scroll down here to databases, you'll see the databases file has been changed. So we're now using our Postgres database here. As we can see, the engine, we have a name, a user, a password, a host, and port automatically defined and secure within environment variables. And you may have seen that if you open up this the blue icon here, and you can see here on this variable section, we can see those values have been set up. Those environment variables and the associated values have been set up and they are secure. And as you can see, they are in place here. All right, along with the secret key environment variable that we also went up and set up into place. That's all in place here and secured for us. So we're now using a Postgres database that is in place and saved for us. Okay. So that is something that also gets set up automatically when you click on the update settings module. So let's scroll down. Okay, and we can also see here that our CSRF trusted origin is also set up as well with the HTTPS scheme according to the default domain name that was assigned for you when you created your project. That's also here neatly into place automatically as well. So the allowed host settings, the CSRF trusted origin settings is also there in place for you, and the database is blocked. So that is what's automatically adjusted for you in your project. A really nice thing that you can also see is you can also access your project files here in this nice sort of editor window. So we can see here that we can access any part of our application as we so desire. And we can also edit it as well, which I'll get onto in just a moment. But this is in our settings.py file. Okay. Now, something that I also want to mention is you're probably wondering, okay, so in terms of the database that was configured to us automatically for Postgres, how are we essentially going to create our super user? So that's a good question. So what you can do is you can click here on this blue icon here, and that's going to bring up this sort of window where you can navigate to the shell. So here is where you can run Python Django management commands. So you can connect to this shell. And here you can just run the associated commands. So let's say we want to create a super user, for example, and this super user is going to be connected to our Postgres database. So what I'm going to do is it's automatically connected to our application. So all you need to say is Python manage.py create super user, enter. And then you want to enter in a username. I'm just going to say Arno. Email, I'm just going to leave that as blank. Then a password, press enter, and again, there we go, our super user was created. So this is one of the helpful features of utilizing the shell. You can go ahead and just run general Python Django based commands that you so desire. So we can say close now. And now what you want to do is you want to go on ahead and sign in with that user in Django admin. So wherever your application is hosted, so here is my application. Let's go to the admin page. And let's go ahead and sign in with that particular set of credentials that we set up. So let's do just that. Right, so here we are. So now what we can do is we can go ahead and log in to our Django admin, hosted now, backed by our Postgres database. And you can now head on over to your user model. And you should be able to see, there we go, there is our super user, our admin. All right, so we've got that in place. Now let's actually test this with our application to see if all the post requests are being set correctly and all of that is in place. So what I'm going to do, of course, is let me head on back to Circumeo and let me open this link in a new tab. So that's going to be the application. And here, of course, is our super user. So we can see automatically we are signed in. So that's, of course, based on my own application. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to log out here. Say log in on the Django admin, go back and just refresh. And let's register a new user, for example, on my website. Right, so I'm just going to create a user. I'm just going to say 102, add in a password. Right, so this is just to prove that all of the requests are working nicely and being pushed to the database. So let's create that account. There we go, account created successfully, perfect. Now let's see if that was pushed to this new Postgres database that has been integrated as well. So now what we can do is go on ahead and enter in the super user credentials again. Perfect. And what we can do now is we can go ahead and log in. Right, and you can head over to your user model. And here we can see that we actually have that user that we just created now is now here just as we set it up. All right. So as we can see now, that record and all those objects are being sent to the Postgres database that we have that's been linked by us automatically by Circumeo that works out of the box. Okay. So that works nicely and it's in place. So we can just go ahead and check that as is. Perfect. Right, so let's head on back and explore some more. So we've got our databases in place as well. And something that I mentioned that I just want to reiterate is that Circumeo is serving our static files, so we don't need to worry about any issues concerning that. So you don't need to use white noise or the sort. So let's go to our application and just refresh on a page where there is CSS. Let me go to the registration page. Let me right click and let me view the page source. And here I can see is my static styles.css file. So let me open that up. And there we go. We can see it is serving it correctly as it should. So we can see our static files, our CSS and our JavaScript files are working as they should be. So that is in place and as it should be. So let's continue with what we have here set up. Now, let's click here on the double blue icon here, and we have explored logs. So any sort of message here that is pertaining to how our application is running is going to be shown and demonstrated here in the logs for you to see. So all the requests and everything of the sort. So generally what you see in local testing development with Django, you'll see all of that information also appearing here as well, along with a lot of other additional information on the platform itself. Of course, the shell you can use to go on ahead and add in Python Django based commands such as creating a super user and the like. Of course, the variable section is for specifying your environment variable, so you can add a new variable, save the changes. Just make sure you need to manually click deploy if you are making those changes and just give it a few moments. Okay, now the next thing I want to mention is going to be based on deploying changes to Circumeo, and this is an important thing to keep in mind. So by default here, you can go on ahead and push changes to a running instance that we're running using dev mode, which is built in with Circumeo. All right, so in dev mode, the editor is going to auto save and trigger an update of the code inside your running instance as well as a server restart. So it's very similar, you could say, to the Python manage.py run server command when we're doing this locally. And you'll see a message that's similar to this that is going to be saving the file wherever you edited it, and it's also going to restart that web container with dev mode in place here. So let's go ahead and test that out. So let's go back to Circumeo and let me look at my application. So I want to change, let's say, some HTML markup that I have here. So I'm going to navigate to my web app here, which is just a Django app that I have. And let me open that up by clicking the following icon. Then I want to go to template. So let me open that up here. And I have it in web app. And I'm just going to go on ahead and look for, let's see what I have here, my index.html file. So this is going to differ for everyone. That opens that up here. And what I'm going to do is scroll down and I want to change this keep track of your records effectively. I just want to set that to track your records. Okay, so you just want to go ahead and see that, and you can see now it says auto saving. So that is what's going to pertain to what is being set up here. So it's going to automatically go on ahead and save those changes in Circumeo. And what you can do is you can actually go to the logs and you can see those changes that were saved. So saving file from what we've edited here, and it's restarted that web container with dev mode enabled here. So all of our changes, of course, is going to be in place and saved, as you can see here. So now if we go to my project, all I've done is I've literally gone ahead and typed in some code, some changes, and if I refresh, it automatically makes that change. So that's one of the great things here of Circumeo, is that it goes on ahead and automatically pushes those updates that you've made easily. No need to worry or stress. It's there and done for you. So let's do that process again now. So we're going to then open up the log quickly so we can actually see the change here. So let me go ahead and set this to, let's remove that and say record management with a dot. And we can open up the logs. It's going to auto save. Then it's going to get that particular file, and we can see it saving to the index.html file, restarted web container, dev mode enabled. So we can see those updates were set up and into place. So we can see it's gone ahead and collated everything. So now let's go back to our project. Now let's just reload the page, and there we go. It says record management. So there we have it. So we can see it has gone ahead and set everything up as it should be and as it's in place. So automatically going on ahead and pushing all those updates. Now, there are a few exceptions. So when they're referring to a full replacement, so clicking deploy. So that is referring to this deploy button here. So the cases in which that would pertain is if you are making updates to your requirements.txt file, when there are new migrations that need to be run, and when environment variables need to be refreshed. So this is the one that we covered now. So when we went ahead and refreshed our environment variables or added them in, we had to click on deploy. So you don't even need to click on deploy for anything else, depending on the changes that you wish to make. All right, so keep that in mind. So it's automatically going to be doing that for you with dev mode, which is an incorporated feature of Circumeo. So just keep that in mind. It's just very important to just notice that. Now, as we can see now that this dev mode, which is being utilized, is enabled by default in new projects. So you can view the settings section here if you want to toggle it off and on. All right, so you can see here the restart application after every save is automatically configured. I wouldn't suggest turning that off, but for clarity, we can click here on the blue icon, navigate to settings, and if you go ahead and scroll down, we can see here it says restart application after every autosave. So that is what, of course, is prompting and allowing us to make those changes automatically after we have made them. Okay, so those are the updates that are going to be initially set up depending on what you change and what you figure. So in the settings area, you can see some more information in terms of your project name, the static root, the URL, media root, and all of those essential areas that are put into place for you. Okay, so that's just something I wanted to mention over updates. So if you're making updates to your source code, just keep in mind all of those details on pushing updates that are made automatically for you. So when you make changes, it's automatically going to deploy those changes for you. And of course, just keep in mind, depending on what you change, you may need to go on ahead and hit this deploy button if you are planning to make any changes that pertain to what we have here. Now, I will be sure to attach the documentation also in the description below for you so that you can go on ahead and keep that into mind. All right, so as we can see, we have our project deployed and it's working as it should be, and it is working like a delight for us. All right, guys, so that is pertaining to deploying to Circumeo. Now, there is something else that I do want to go over with you, and that is going to be focused on setting up a custom domain name, just giving you some guidance on that. So that's something that we can go ahead and discuss and look into. Right, so let's take a look into setting up a custom domain name. So what you want to do is you just want to click on the blue icon yet again, and you want to make sure that you've clicked on settings. Okay. Now, as we scroll down, there will be a few things that I'll touch upon. So as you can see here in the general settings table, we can see information on the project name, the static root, URL, the media root, and URL directories in place. And of course, the dev mode is of course on because we are choosing to restart our application after every autosave. We can also see information on salary. So if you plan on integrating salary, you would enter in your path for salary here, and you can also click on the docs to see some more information in place. You can also download your project code here as well. That's an opportunity for you to explore, and you can export your project database as well. That's something you can also go into. Now, since this project is built in the free mode, what we would need to do is upgrade our project to the Pro mode, and that's going to support custom domains and automatic TLS certificates. Now, in terms of setting all of this up, you would need to go on ahead first and go to the Pro mode, which will be $4 per month. And then you'll be able to go on ahead and set up your custom domain, of course, with Circumeo. And what's also going to be provided is a section which is going to be focused on configuring your DNS records that's going to be associated with your project on Circumeo. So what you're going to want to do is, once your project has been set to Pro mode, you're going to want to navigate to settings again. And then what you're going to want to do is scroll down, and then you'll see an area here which is going to provide you with more information on setting up that custom domain name in terms of DNS records and the like. So please keep that in mind if you want to set up your domain name. So once you've upgraded to Pro mode, you can go to settings, scroll down, and you'll see the associated area which will provide you with more information. Okay, and another thing, of course, here just to mention is a question that a lot of people have asked me is, if they deploy their application on a free tier on any other deployment platform, this goes for all of them and the like. And usually the free tier, of course, is going to be resource restricted, and that can be the case where your application goes to sleep after a period of an activity. So it may take time, if you are not actively on your application, that you would need to refresh, and it takes a long time to refresh and process requests. So this is a limitation of a free tier. Of course, on a pro tier, what will of course happen is your application, as we can see, is going to remain online 24/7. So just some further context and information to give you, especially on the guidance for setting up your domain name. All right, guys, so we can close this now. And that is, of course, going to entail setting up the custom domain name with some guidance for you and the like. All right, so the next thing that I want to do is I want to now go ahead and dive deeper into these cases where a full replacement is going to be required when we are changing the requirements.txt file, when there are new migrations that need to be run, and when the environment variables need to be refreshed. So I have touched upon this case with environment variables, but I want to go a little bit deeper into the other cases as well. So let's do just that. So we can head on over to Circumeo, and let's first of all set this up for our requirements.txt file. So I'm just going to navigate there. Let's go to requirements.txt, and I just want to change my Django version, for example. So I'm going to set this to 5.0.7. The autosave is still going to be in place here with dev mode, but you're going to have to deploy to make sure there aren't any issues or problems. So what we can do is we can go ahead and say deploy now that we have gone ahead and made an update to our requirements.txt file. So we can say deploy, and notice now it's going to have a message here that says deployment in progress, and it's going to be grayed out or blued out, you could say, to signify that the deployment is in progress. So we can click here on the blue icon here, and here in the logs, if we were to scroll down, we can see that it is starting deployment. The image build is being started, and it's going to go on ahead and look for Django 5.0.7. and it's going to collect it, and it's going to set it up and install it for us. So there we go, it's successfully installed Django 5.07, as we can see in the logs. Right, so it's just going to now rebuild our environment with the image and rebuild everything with the image builder that's built in with Circumeo. So we can close this section now, and as soon as everything has been built and is a success, this icon here is going to switch from blue to green. So what we're going to want to do is just be a little bit patient here while that process is underway. Should be relatively quick, and then we can continue with looking at the next use case. And there we go, it's been a success. So if we open back the log, we can now see everything is starting and working on GUnicorn, and it is a success. So we can close this, and good measure, just to refresh our application, and you can just navigate a little bit in between, and we can see we're good to go. All right, perfect. So we've gone ahead and explored this first case. So let's explore in detail when there are new migrations that need to be run. So let's go to Circumeo, and I have a Django app here that's been set up for my project, for example. So what you can do is you can go on to your models.py file of your Django app. So my Django app is called web app. That's part of my project. And then you want to go to your models.py file. And what we can do with the test is we can go ahead and create a new model. So I'm going to scroll down and I'm just going to create a simple one here. So I'm just going to copy what I have on my base models that I already have and create a new one. And I'm just going to go ahead and set this as, let's call this main mod. I'm just going to call it main mod. And I'm just going to set this to, yeah, we can keep this at full name. The char field, I just want to add in some space just for uniqueness. So this is the model here that I'm going to now create. So once I have made the migrations, the initial migrations, it will appear in this migrations folder here. So as you can see, in my case, I have up to 0004. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to click here on the blue icon, navigate to the shell, and you want to say connect. So you want to connect to the Python Django shell, and you want to say Python manage.py make migrations. All right, and enter. So this is going to create that model main mod in your migrations folder of your Django app which you're in. And in this case, it's going to be 0005 for me. If I close this, okay, and I go to migrations, I'm not going to see it yet. So what needs to happen is you need to kind of refresh your page. And I'll show you a simple way which you can do that. You can just go to your menu, go to your projects, and then go and say edit again on the project you're working with. And what we can do is just say close here, and you can just navigate now to your migrations folder, and there we go, we have that migration that we made, 0005. Now, from what I've noticed, if we click and go to the shell, you can technically run python manage.py migrate here as well, and it will migrate your model to the database. So you can run python manage.py migrate, but what you can also do is you can let Circumeo do it for you. So this is where I can see we would need to run those migrations, so where it would be very beneficial. So keep in mind you can run it here, but what you could also do is you can go ahead and just say deploy. So once you have set up the model that you want to use, and then it's in your migrations folder, you need to then say deploy. And that's going to migrate that model for you. So if we go to the logs, all right, you're going to see now it's going to run python3 manage.py migrate, and you're going to see that execution in place. So it's going to make that migration for you. So let's just give it a moment to find that particular model. Let's give it a moment here to just find it. And then it's going to install it for us with the pre-assigned, there we go, applying web app 005 main mod. That's our model. Okay, so it's gone ahead and made that migration. And now all it's going to do is go ahead and redeploy our application for us. So now we can see the green is in place. So now, just as good measure, let's just refresh our application. And we can see everything is working as it should be. Right, perfect. So well done. We've got that in place. Now, just to give you some more distinction and concrete knowledge, let's say we want to just now register this particular model within our admin.py file. So it's called main mod. If I go to my admin.py file, I can just go ahead and add it in. So main mod was the name of the model, and I can just say admin.site.register and main mod. Okay, so you can see this is a very simple change here. It's of course going to auto save. We don't need to hit deploy because of course this doesn't fall in the cases. This is going to essentially go on ahead and push our code automatically and deploy it as is without any issues or problems for us. So we don't need to even worry about that. And to just prove that this is going to work easily and register it with no manual deployment change and automatically does it for you, you can just navigate to your admin site. Let's go ahead and enter in our credentials. All right, so let's log in. And as we can see, that main mod model has been registered for us. So you can see there with dev mode enabled, we didn't need to manually hit the deploy button. It was automatically done for us. So in these cases, it is very useful to go on ahead in this fashion. Right, so we have that set. Let's head on back to our default domain name. There we go. Great, perfect. So we've gone ahead and we've mastered the second step. So when there are new migrations that need to be run, let's go in detail when environment variables need to be refreshed. So let's do that. So let's head on to Circumeo. Close everything here, go to our settings.py file of our project. And as we can see, we have to keep in mind the secret key. So we did touch upon this, but let's go into detail with the environment variables factor. Now, if we go on ahead and open up what we have here, so we can see we have our secret key and the value. So let's say, for example, a use case, let's say we were to change everything up. So let's say we change what we have here as the environment variable. We would need to make that change here as well. So let's go ahead and try that out. So let's say, for example, I switch this to project underscore key. Okay, that's going to obviously also save. It's going to run that change for me. But of course, if I were to also go on ahead and navigate to my environment variables and also change this to project key, right, and let's say I were to save those changes, okay, those environment variables have been updated, so it should be perfectly fine now. But if we go to our logs, scroll down, okay, so we've got our worker there in place. Now let me refresh the domain. We're going to run into an error. Okay, so the issue here that we're having is that we have not gone ahead and made the deployment section here with the release because we haven't refreshed actually our environment variable. Because as we can see in variables, we have it right here set. Okay, we save the changes, but we need to say deploy. So let's go ahead and click on deploy. And that's going to grab in the new environment variable name, which is called project key. And it's going to make sure that it's linked up here to get it from the environment of Circumeo. So let's just give that a moment. So you can check the progress here, of course, in the logs. We can now see it's listening. We don't have any errors or whatnot. So I'd recommend just giving it a moment, and then you can head on back to your domain and refresh. Right, there we go. So we can now see that it has been connected to it and it's working perfectly as it should. All right, so there we have it. So we've now gone ahead and evaluated those core changes that we went ahead to check into place. Now, a final thing that we can do, which I think most of you are probably wondering, is let's remove this allowed host, the star. So we can do that. And it's going to auto save for us. So what we can do is now just head on to our project. And there we go. So everything is working perfectly as it should. So of course we didn't need to go ahead and say deploy again because it wasn't part of the cases that we had in place there. So now we have our load house setting here as it should be, working perfectly as it should. So there we have it. We have our application there in place and ready to go as it should function. Right, so that's it, guys. There are all the fundamentals in place, explained and in detail. So that's it for this video tutorial. I know it was quite long, but I wanted to explore all the aspects and all the unique functionalities of Circumeo so that you have a greater understanding of how everything is working, how everything is in place, and how everything is going to be integrated as it should be with the entire process that is being shown to you underhand. Right, guys, so that's it. And as always, thank you for the support, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.